In today's video, going from 20% body fat or something like this down to about 12% body fat, and we're gonna talk about how you do that and avoid hunger. Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com. In today's video, we're gonna talk about fat loss. A lot of people reach out to me with specific ideas around their fat loss goals, and a lot of you have already obtained a lot of success. So I want to help you with that, because a lot of understanding how our body is dynamic and how it changes over time can help you maintain or even continue with your success. So first of all, go to my Instagram direct message, guys. Here it is on the screen, and send me your direct messages. I love to answer these questions. So let me read the question that we got today, and then we're going to get into it. Hey, been watching your video. I've lost around 35 pounds. Congratulations. And now I'm at 20% body fat. And I want to get down to 12%, but my hunger levels are very high and I don't think I can continue. Any advice? Now, I didn't get any specifics from this individual on how many calories they're taking in, even their height, weight, nothing like this. But I'm gonna make a bunch of assumptions, so you guys just have to roll with it, because I do take in a lot of phone calls. And if you're looking for a coach, we do free coaching consultations. I'll put the link below. And on these consultation calls, I often hear a very similar story. And if you've lost some weight, you've typically been on a very restrictive approach to dieting, right? Did I nail that one? You guys take an approach where you go super low calorie and you just go really hard for a while. And that shows us a couple things. One, that you're able to sustain a successful fat loss diet. But if you don't have the tools and the understanding how to come out of that diet or how to continue that diet, well, it could all be for naught. You could actually end up weighing the weight you had before or even higher. So I want to talk about a few things first. I'm going to make some assumptions here, and I'm going to say that this individual was 235 pounds and he's dieted down to 200 pounds, and that's around his 20% body fat weight. This is going to give me a baseline for where I can set up some calories for this person. Now, without knowing what your calories were, I'm going to say you were being very aggressive. Let's just say you were at around 200 protein, 100 carb, and say 50 fat. That would be a pretty aggressive fat loss diet. Now, you may have been, lower on the protein or higher on the carbs or fats, but that gives us an idea of where we've been. And, if you're dieting down on 100 grams of carbs, 50 fat, and 200 protein, you likely will get very hungry, especially with your activity. You didn't mention how active you are. You didn't mention your job. You didn't mention your daily activity. These are all the things that we take into account when we're looking at creating a successful fat loss phase. But what happens when you lose body fat is that your hunger signals get elevated, right? Also, your satiety signals are decreased, meaning you're going to be hungrier throughout the day. But there are some things that we can do to combat this and things that we use in tools. Now, dealing with a little bit of hunger is okay, right? It makes us enjoy our food more. It makes us look forward to our food more. But if it's psychologically difficult to constantly be hungry, well, it can help to give us something to know perhaps we won't be as hungry one day a week or multiple days a week or even for a week at a time. So the first thing I want to talk about is a refeed, or a high calorie day in the midst of your low calorie dieting. Now, typically what people use is called a cheat meal, right? They'll say, okay, one day a week I get to go out and not track, and they'll have a burger and fries and they'll have a dessert, and then they'll get back on their diet. And that's a psychological tool that has a lot of value, because it's basically you're putting the carrot out there in front of that horse, right? And you just know you're gonna work to get there. I prefer instead to use a day refeed, where perhaps we're not using a cheat meal that's untracked. That could potentially turn into a binge, right? We don't wanna have this behavior where we're restricting, overeating, and then restricting, right? I prefer to learn about flexibility. Okay, flexible dieting is a tool that we use as a coach. I use it, our company uses it, and it teaches us that there are no bad foods, guys. There are no bad foods, okay? All foods that are consumed are converted to energy in our body, and they have some value, right? But they get demonized, and we start to use this binary thinking of good or bad. And if you treat it that way, it's gonna be very difficult for you to sustain long-term success, because you're just gonna start associating certain foods as bad. And when you eat them, it's gonna then lead you to having days, weeks, perhaps months or years of bad behavior, thinking, I don't wanna go back on that boring ass diet, right? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna talk about a refeed day. That refeed day, if this individual is at 200 protein, 100 carb, 50 fat, it would probably bring the protein down a little bit, maybe to 180. It would probably bring the carbs up to say 200, and maybe the fats would stay the same. We could bump them or lower them based on, what this individual likes. Do they prefer more fats? Do they prefer more carbs? This one day a week is kind of a reprieve from the grind of fat loss. Okay, most of my clients are typically on 2 days of refeeds per week. I find that 2 consecutive days really helps with digestion and hormones and getting the metabolism going and just giving the athlete a chance to recover from their week of work. The next approach that I use is called a diet break. Now, there's a really interesting study called the Matador study out of Australia several years ago, and I started implementing this with my athletes where we would take entire weeks off. Now, I coach competitive bodybuilders. I'll show you some on the screen here. These athletes are maintaining very low body fat, below our body fat set point. So they are literally hungry for months at a time, right? But the goal is to reach a body fat in a muscular composition where they can get on stage and be successful. So to do that, I've had to find some tools. And when I started implementing diet breaks or week-long maintenance phases, well, the results were staggering. Oftentimes my athletes would drop weight. Almost certainly they would maintain weight on more calories, less cardio, and what I found was there were less issues after the diet. They were able to maintain their weight and get back to a healthy position without dealing with hunger and other issues that most contest prep competitors deal with. And this was actually backed up by this research in the Matador study. Now in the Matador study, they weren't bodybuilding competitors, but they were going on 2-week diets followed by 2 weeks at maintenance. And they did this over a 16-week diet or 32 weeks. And what they found was the individuals that dieted for just 16 weeks straight didn't lose as much body fat, lost more muscle, and weren't able to maintain as much weight loss as the group that did it over 32 weeks. Well, what does that tell you? It tells you that giving yourself a break every now and then while you're dieting is gonna help you lose more body fat, keep more muscle, and keep more body fat off. So what is a diet break? Well, it's essentially a recovery week where you bring your calories up to maintenance. Now, your maintenance calories are not the calories that you had when you started your diet. It's roughly 20 to 30% more calories than you're taking in now, and I typically will keep protein pretty steady, kind of like a refeed day. I'll bring the carbs up some, I'll bring the fats up some, but the key here for me is I always reduce the cardio output, right? So my athletes are typically doing cardio once to twice a day during contest prep, multiple days per week. Well, we'll cut that in half, and we'll really focus on bringing the calories up to maintenance or current maintenance for 1 week. And then after that week, we can decide, do we go back into a fat loss, calories, or if we had a really good week, maybe we extend it for another week. With contest prep competitors, we're dealing with a timeline. With lifestyle, if you're just looking to long-term reach your goals, well, it might be in your best interest to just focus on, hey, I'm feeling good, I'm gonna go for another week. You know, this can turn into a phase where you kind of maintain your weight for a little bit, but get to keep the higher calories, and then when you're ready, you can get back into fat loss, and I promise you, that's gonna lead to more success. Something that not a lot of people talk about that I find very helpful is diet sodas. Now, I'm gonna show you guys a study here that actually showed that when compared to just drinking water, diet soda actually helped people lose more weight and maintain their weight loss. Why? Well, it's got 0 calories, but it's got something in there that does help. For me, caffeine, honestly, a little bit of the bubblies, and then you've also got some sweetness to it. So sometimes during the day when I'm dieting down, and if you guys haven't seen, I've dieted down and done quite a few bodybuilding shows. I'll show you some stuff on the screen here. I find that as I get into my dieting phases, when I feel the hunger kick in and say the middle of the day, what do? I go grab myself a diet soda and I'm able to go for a few more hours. Now, if you don't want diet soda, you could do coffee, something like this, but whatever it is, those 0 calorie beverages with a little bit of caffeine and a little bit of taste that you enjoy can be a reprieve when you're dealing with feeling hungry. Now, the biggest one is going to be food type, right? This is why there's an association with foods being good or bad. We typically think of good foods, things like broccoli, as good. Why? Well, because they're very calorie low dense, right? So the amount of food that you eat, you get a lot of volume for low calories. There's also lots of micronutrients, and the key is fiber. Fiber is a great one. So I'll put a list here of the top 10 foods that I think are great for dieting, that are high volume, that are gonna have some fiber in them, and they're just gonna help you on your way to dieting. The goal should always be to find an approach that works for you. Other methods that can help you with hunger is changing your meal timing. Now, our hunger signals are most closely associated with the times that we eat. If you always eat at 9 a.m., your body recognizes that, and a little bit before 9 a.m. you'll start to notice you get hungry. You can change these hunger windows by changing your eating patterns. A lot of people will use fasting, either fast throughout the day, or they'll do alternate day fasting. And sometimes this helps. I prefer instead to stick to a schedule each day where I eat 3 to 4, sometimes even 5 meals a day based on my schedule. But when I find I stick to those same eating windows, I only get hungry around those times, okay? This can allow you to be very productive throughout your day. You're not always thinking about food when you know you have a schedule. Planning your meals ahead is always going to be a big one. The most successful trait of dieters is that they actually have their meals packed and planned ahead. So if you take all these things, including drinking lots of water throughout the day, we've all heard the old saying that sometimes when we're hungry, we're actually thirsty. Well, if you drink enough water with each meal, it's going to help you stay fuller longer. And until you get to a very, very low body fat percentage, you should be able to diet successfully, certainly from 20% down to 12% body fat with very little struggle. For men, once they get below that 12%, that's typically around our set point or slightly below. That's when we're going to have slightly elevated hunger kind of constantly. But until then, it's probably likely the fact that you're either dieting on too low calories, the wrong foods, not mixing in some diet sodas, your meal timing is off, or maybe you just need a reprieve, a diet break, or a refeed day. All right, guys, I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.